big warm welcome to today's event. Um, I'm Shani Dhanda and I'm the host taking you through this webinar. I just want to start by showing my visual description. I'm a South Asian woman, I have a short stature and I experience disability. Today I'm wearing a printed pink and black cardigan with a black top and I've got long brown hair and my pronouns are she, her. And I am a disability inclusion consultant and broadcaster and a very proud ambassador of Evenbreak. And it's a real pleasure to be hosting this conversation that is actually really close to my heart today, and I have a lot of opinions on. But before I introduce the panel, I just want to remind everybody what we're here to talk about. So today we're going to really dive into the realities, challenges, and opportunities of remote work, exploring its impact on diverse communities and the steps needed for truly inclusive workplaces. So get ready for a really insightful discussion, real stories, and actionable insights from our amazing panelists, because it's really time to rethink and reshape our approach to work in a world where inclusivity is key. So do, feel free to ask questions. You can pop them into the chat and we will come to Q&A after our panel discussion and be part of this thought-provoking discussion as much as you want to today. So I'm just going to invite the panelists to introduce themselves. Jane, I'll come to you first, then Rachel, then Joe.
Thanks, Shani. So yeah, I'm Jane Hatton. I'm a white woman of a certain age, in my 60s, short blonde hair and wearing a blue jumper today, and my pronouns are she and her. And I'm very proud to be the founder and CEO of Evenbreak, which is a social enterprise helping disabled people find new or better work through a very accessible global job board. And I'll pass over to Rachel.
Hello, I'm Rachel and I work with Jane. Quick description, I'm currently wearing, I have blonde hair, very big dark glasses. I'm currently wearing a cardigan, but that could change. You will see it come on and off because I am in my 50s. So I don't think we need to go into why. So part of my job at Evenbreak is making sure that the barriers that our team need are removed so they can be their absolute best at work. And my pronouns are she, her.
Yes, it's my turn. Hi, everyone. I'm Jo. My pronouns are they and them. And for a visual description, I've got short red hair. I'm wearing a black top with embroidery on the sleeves. And I am a white person who turns 30 on Thursday. So happy birthday to me, I guess. So I am one of the diversity and inclusion lead trainers at Diversifying Group. And I'm also a disabled person. I use a wheelchair when I need it, and I have chronic illnesses, so that will come into the conversation today, I'm sure.
Oh, thanks, Jo, and happy birthday for Thursday.
Yeah,
and Jane, I'd like to highlight that Evenbreak is a multi-award-winning job site for disabled talent and inclusive employers, because Jane is and her team, her amazing team at Evenbreak, are scooping them up at the moment, which is just brilliant to see. Okay, so let's get into our discussion. So some of you may have noticed that the title of this webinar has the words post-pandemic in quotation marks. So would anyone from the panel like to share their thoughts on this? Why have we done that?
I have so many thoughts on this, so I'm happy to jump straight in. So the pandemic is still ongoing, whether we like to acknowledge it or not. And there are many disabled and clinically extremely vulnerable people who are still shielding and limiting social interactions, and they're getting absolutely no formal support to do so, despite it being the best thing they can do to stay alive. And when we're thinking about the pandemic as a whole, about 60% of deaths have been of disabled people, and the risk is still there. The only difference now is a complete lack of infrastructure to support people who are seriously affected by COVID. And there's also the issue of long COVID, which is intensely disabling and can affect absolutely everybody. So the risks aren't being taken seriously, and the public as a general whole, very much generalizing, has largely abandoned things like masking and social distancing, which means that many disabled people are stuck at home, not actually able to interact with other people, go outside. And that really links to what we're talking about today, because the opportunities for at-home working are drying up, which means that many people who are vulnerable to COVID aren't able to leave the house and go to the office and do their jobs there. So that means people are having to kind of drop out of the workplace. So we need to bear this in mind when we're talking about issues of remote working, that the risk is still there. It's still very present. And for the people who are most affected by COVID, for example, people who have immune system dysfunction or anything like that, it's a very real and pressing issue.
And also,
Thanks.
we're talking about this particular pandemic, which, as you say, is still ongoing. There will be others. This isn't going to be the only, pandemic. It isn't the only pandemic that's ever happened. There will be others. And as a society, we need to get ourselves ready for the next pandemic and not just sort of shut our eyes and think, oh, it won't happen, it won't happen. Because unfortunately, that's what we did before this pandemic, and which is why we were so ill prepared for it. So I think as a society, we just have to be aware that this is part of life. We are going to have this pandemic is going to be ongoing, and there will be others. And as a society, we need to be ready for that and accommodating that.
And I can't help but notice that, the timing of this discussion, whilst the COVID inquiry is currently happening, and all of the things that we're learning about, the decisions that were made, how they were made. I'm not going to get too political, but you're absolutely right. And Jo, thanks for really illustrating that point so well. We are still living in a pandemic, and I think for me, it's like everyone was in the same situation, and now there's just a couple of us left in that boat, and a lot of people are being left behind once again. And everybody did know what that experience was like, even if it was for a short period of time, but there are still people being excluded, and it's not okay. And of course, prior to 2020, remote working was the exception, not the rule. And because of that, we did see a lot of changes to our working patterns and practices over the lockdowns, and we're going to reflect on some of that today. So Jane and Rachel, can you tell us a bit about how lockdowns have impacted work at Evenbreak?
Not much. I'll let Rachel explain why that is.
Yeah. To be honest, whilst everybody was running around with their hair on fire on that Monday morning, we were kind of like, what's going on? Everything seems to have started running slowly, because Evenbreak we've always had a remote team, because Jane's whole ethos was that everybody who worked for Evenbreak had lived experience of disability. Working from home means we can recruit people from absolutely all over the UK who are working from home. So the day of lockdown, we were kind of like business as usual for us. As it progressed, we did furlough a couple of the team because we had to be strategic, because obviously suddenly everybody's going, oh my goodness me, we can't recruit anymore because we don't know what's happening. So our number of jobs on the board went down. So we were very strategic about the way we sort of kept the core function running so we could get through the pandemic. But it was really great because we were able to show best practice to employers who were coming to us and kind of going, oh my goodness me. And we were going, hey, look, we've got this. We can help you. We can tell you about this. We can tell you, that it's possible to do this. So we were talking to them, because there was, in some organizations, there was still a requirement to recruit. So at that point, we were talking to them, obviously, about home working. We were talking to them about things like job carving. So if you get somebody who can do a certain part of the job, but not another part of the job. So we were actually able to demonstrate best practice. As it hit, we were not that affected until sort of later on. But it was really, really great to see a lot of the organizations kind of going, oh, actually, do you know what? We can do this, because they've been saying to candidates for ages, no, you can't, we can't possibly do that. Well, no, home working. I come from a background of corporate IT, and I was actually quite a long time ago, one of their first people when they trialed home working, and this is easily 20 years ago. And it worked perfectly for me because it meant that I could focus on the stuff that I needed to focus on. And I think a lot of people found working from home, it enabled them to kind of be the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
Not everybody liked it. I get that. Not all of our team want to always work from home.
Yeah.
There are benefits to be had for getting together, but you know, for us, it was a really good opportunity to say to employers, look, you can do it. It is possible to do it. Jane, would you want to add anything to that?
Oh, me, sorry. Yes. Yeah, you know, I mean, I think it was business as usual for us, but it was really useful because a lot of our employers were saying, how do we carry on with teamwork? How do we still collaborate with our teams when they're all in different places? And we were able to say, well, actually, there's this software is accessible, this software not so much, maybe you could use this one. And because it's something we've been doing forever, and one of the benefits that came out of the pandemic, and there were so many tragedies, it's good to look for silver linings, is that it did prove that a lot of these things can be done and can be done well, and in some cases done even better. And yeah, I know we're going to talk about how we've gone on since then, but yeah, it was a good opportunity for us to be able to say to employers, look, there are ways you can do this and it will work really well for you.
A brilliant position to be in, and to help to support so many organizations. And you know, I love the fact that for Evenbreak it was just business as usual. And Jane, I remember having a conversation with you about that at the time, and I was like, that's so cool, like it just makes so much sense.
And actually for us, it wasn't just about accessibility and inclusion, it was about talent. So if we have an office in such a town, and we're only employing people who can commute to that particular location, that's a drastic reduction of the talent that we have available to us, whereas location isn't a barrier for us. So we want the best person for the job. I don't care whether you live in the Outer Hebrides or we've got people in Scotland, people in Cornwall, people in London, people in the middle of nowhere in Suffolk. And it means that we can just it makes perfect sense. We can get the talent from wherever it happens to choose to live.
Yeah. I think, Rachel, as well, you touched upon a really important point that not everybody loves remote or hybrid work. And we're never going to live in a world where one approach suits and benefits everybody. But so I think a really key thing that we must not lose is this, is flexibility and meeting people's needs as well. I think it's important to say that as well. But Jo, can you tell us about your experience of remote working at Diversifying Group and how this has either helped or hindered you at work?
So my experience of remote working is quite hard to contrast to in-office working because I'm unable to do that completely because of my chronic illnesses. Okay. So if I were unable to work for the most part remotely, I wouldn't be able to have a job at all. Traveling, especially with a wheelchair, causes a huge amount of stress and fatigue. And if I have to go into an office, by the time I get there, I'm too tired to function, let alone have a whole work day and then travel home as well. So for me, remote working is the only real viable option for my health. Sometimes I do have to travel to a client site to deliver training sessions, which is very draining, even though I love it and it's totally worth it. So working remotely gives me a chance to kind of recover from that over the next few days. There are downsides though. So there's the reduced social interaction, which I really thrive off of. I really kind of, I do a lot better mentally when I've got people around me. But there are things that can be done about that. You can have online socials and drop-in sessions for chats. And we do things like that. So we have Friday socials where the whole company gets together and does something fun. And then we also have company meetings on the Monday. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have coffee mornings. And then on Wednesdays, we have a lunch and learn. So every single day of the week, there's an opportunity to do something together if that's what you want to do. And I think you're absolutely right, Shani. It's about that flexibility, allowing people to meet up in person if that's what they want to do, be present online if that's what they want to do as well. And we also have the occasional strategy day in person. You can also join remotely as well. And that's a really good way of kind of refreshing our connections to each other. So my experiences of remote working have been overwhelmingly positive because I'm simply unable to do anything else. So out of curiosity, before this webinar, I decided to go on LinkedIn and have a look at what remote positions were available. And there are so few now. So I was thinking, you know, if I ever want to leave my dream job for whatever reason it might be, what on earth am I going to do? So I think when we're considering remote working, there are pros and cons to it, obviously. But for some people, it is the only option. And not having that only option available or even as a possibility is so drastically cutting down on the kinds of people you can employ, the talent you can get into your organization, and is very rigid. So I think because the negatives of remote working have workarounds and the pros of it could be the only option for somebody. It's, for me, there's no question to it. It's something that if you want to be an inclusive organization, it's something you've got to do.
Absolutely. There's so much of what you said that really resonated with me. Like, I would not be as productive or be able to do the amount of work that I am able to do if I did not work in a hybrid way. And I really wanted to do that pre-pandemic, but it was the people that I was working with, they didn't want to do that. So it's definitely benefited me, and I think I can make healthier decisions as a result of that. But a poll has flashed up and everyone's had a chance to answer. So we can clearly see the majority of people's working styles on the call today are hybrid at 62%, with in contrast 4% office only and 34% being fully remote.
That's interesting, isn't it? I wonder if, because I know a lot of the employers that we're working with have gone to kind of a hybrid model, but that can vary between you can work as many or as few days as you like in the office to you have to be in the office for 4 days a week. That could be described as hybrid, or 1 day a week or 1 day a month. So hybrid itself is a very loose term, isn't it? What does it really mean? And I suspect to some extent we're preaching to the converted. I expect that most people on this call are employers who are interested in flexible and remote and hybrid and different ways of inclusive working. So we're probably not talking to typical employers here. We're probably talking to the more enlightened employers anyway in the first place.
Definitely. And Nigel in the chat has I think shared that sentiment and said hybrid should just be renamed as flexible, because you can choose then what you want to do. But Jo, I just want to touch upon the point how you talked about how intentional Diversifying Group is being about connecting online for those that want to, because a big sort of argument I hear a lot for people that aren't a big fan of flexible working, hybrid working, is that they don't get the same interaction. And of course, it's never going to be the same as being in person. But I feel like if people thought about how intentional they have been to build in-person culture, you need to be that intentional to build an online hybrid working culture as well. And I don't think people have quite done that very well, or really understood that that's what they need to do in order to have just as good outcomes of connectivity and socialization online. We did it loads during lockdowns. I'd never felt so included before online. And I think that that's all just dropped off. So thanks for pointing that out. I think it's a really good point around we have to be intentional with online culture as well.
Absolutely. I mean, a good culture doesn't always develop organically. You've got to put effort into it. You've got to make steps to make sure that everybody feels included and welcomed. And remote working doesn't work for everybody. But there are opportunities for social interaction outside of the workplace as well. And I think if it's a toss-up between some people being completely excluded from work and some people thinking, all right, on my lunch break, I'm going to go and have a coffee with a friend in kind of real life. yeah, I struggle to kind of picture a world where we would choose to completely exclude people from the workplace, as we have been doing. I really struggle to kind of come to terms with that and realize that there are a lot of organizations that don't necessarily have the trust in their employees that when they're working from home, they will do their jobs. I think that's quite sad, because I think trust is a two-way street. You've got to build that trust and that kind of collaborative way of working with your employees to encourage them to reach out to somebody via Teams or jump on a call or whatever might be most accessible to them to actually have those conversations happening. And that's something that at Diversifying Group we've made quite a point of. So we've got many different departments here, but we all do collaborative work. In the last week, I've worked with marketing, I've worked with recruitment, I've worked with even board practice, which is very different to my role in training. So there are ways of doing it. It's just, as you say, it has to be quite intentional, and you have to put the same kind of strategy into it that you'd put into creating a culture in person.
Yeah. So keeping with that sort of point, and this is a question to all the panel, how do we keep pushing progress forwards with regards to working styles and arrangements? What key things do employers need to consider from your perspectives? Rachel, we'll come to you first.
It's really one of the really nice things about listening to Jo is I'm kind of going, yep, we do that, yep, we do that. And it's I mean, trust is absolutely 100% paramount. And as managers, we should know, we do know if people are doing or are not doing their jobs. And it's that absolute intentional building of online togetherness. Jane and I have known each other for around about 20 years. And I think the first 10 years of our friendship was purely online. It's not a poo-poo thing. It's not as good as. It's an inclusive way of getting people in. And it is constantly pushing, making sure that people know what their responsibilities are. So they've got a good job description. They know what they're expected to deliver. They know who they can go to for help. There can be an open door policy. We do a lot of cross-working. So we've got somebody who's working on a project which on its own might not be that much fun for them to be working on. So we've kind of gone, hey, go and work with the marketing team, because they're going to be able to give you some really good ideas. And if somebody's got a big piece of work that's, for example, going through a lot of data or something like that, we'll kind of go, hey, look, do you want to have a sprint hour? We'll just have a push hour. You start at the top of the list, I'll start at the bottom of the list, and let's all crack on. Because when you're working on your own on something that's a bit of a task, and it's about, as managers, knowing what our teams have got on, understanding their working style, understanding their own challenges, especially, you know, for us in Evenbreak, everybody has lived experience of disability. So there will be different barriers. And our team meeting on a Monday morning is, hello, did everybody have a nice weekend? This is what's happening this week. Does anybody have any barriers that they need to get sorted out? So it's just finding innovative ways. But I think the bedrock, the absolute foundation is it's built on trust. It's trusting our team to deliver the things and making sure that we've put everything in place so they understand what is expected as well.
And
I think it's also, it's important, isn't it, when you're looking at, you know, as someone who's running a business, even if you look at it, you know, take inclusion and accessibility and ethics and all the rest of it right out of the equation. What you need as an organization is for your people to be as productive as they can be. That's the bottom line, isn't it? You know, none of us are here just to give people jobs because, you know, we've got nothing else to do with our money. You know, every employee is valued and is valuable and is needed. And if we are, you know, there was certainly, I mean, I'm very, very old, but I still think there's a lot of presenteeism around. So people are judged on, oh, well, that person's a really good employee because they're at their desk 40 hours a week. They might be at their desk 40 hours a week playing solitaire. So it's not about presenteeism. It's not about the amount of hours that somebody works. It's about what they're producing, what the impact is, what the outcomes are, what the outputs are. And if you're a good manager, you will know that. It's not about having somebody in the desk next to you so you can watch what they're doing. you can see if somebody's not producing or somebody's not doing what they should be doing because the work isn't getting done. So for me, if you treat people like responsible adults, which all employees are, they will behave like responsible adults and they'll feel that kind of commitment and motivation to do the job that they're paid to do. I think if we treat employees like children who are trying to play the game and get away with doing nothing, that's exactly how they'll behave. It's how I'd behave. If somebody was showing me they didn't trust me, I'd think, well, what's the point? What's the point in me working as hard as I can if they're going to assume I'm not working anyway? Whereas if I think someone is trusting me to get this job done, I feel a real kind of personal obligation to get that job done. So for me, it's about having a culture within an organization, whether the person's sitting at the desk next to you in the same office or whether they're online 500 miles away. It's about having that trust, that relationship, that this is what I'm hoping that you will achieve in your role. If you need anything, I'm here, let me know. If you need any support, we're happy to give it. But actually, I'm relying on you to do this job. People will respond to that. And that's the kind of culture we want, whether we're employing disabled people or marginalized people in other ways. It's about people being productive and feeling valued and supported and giving their best in the workplace. To me, it makes absolute perfect business sense.
Yeah, me too.
I'm sorry to just jump in again, but one of the challenges that we found, we're being honest about, it's really tempting when you work from home to kind of go, oh, actually, I'll just do that a little bit more. Oh, no, I'll just do that a little bit. You're not walking away from the office. So as managers and leaders, we have to model good behaviour as well. So Jane's got a brilliant bit on her signature that says, look, I work different hours and sociable hours. Do not feel that you need to respond. So that is something that I think we do need to be mindful of as well. It's something I struggle with. I'm kind of like, oh, well, I'll just do another, but we do have to model good behaviour so that people don't feel there's an obligation for them to be online at hours that do not suit their working style.
There is a kind of, I think the perception wasn't there, if people work from home, they'll be swinging the lead, they won't be working, they'll be watching daytime TV, they'll be, going off and doing the washing and the housework and whatever. And, and for me, it's not about, I need to see that you're online, I need to see that you're doing this or that or the other. It's about, I need to know that you are working in conditions that work for you. And if that's at 2 o'clock in the morning, that's entirely up to you. And supporting people to work and again, that can be around disability, it can be around fluctuating conditions or energy or fatigue or pain or whatever it might be. But also it's just about I'm not a morning person. So if you want really productive work out of me, don't ask me at 7:30 in the morning. I'm much more likely to be productive at 7:30 in the evening. And actually a good manager will know their individual people and what works for them. And that might be family commitments, it might be a disability, it might be a health condition, it might be all sorts of different things. But we're going to get the best out of our people if we know them, trust them and support them. And as a business, that's what we want.
And also, like, we're human beings, aren't we? We're not robots. I cannot get up every day and do a solid 8-hour day work, just sat there, or if that was my job, I wouldn't be able to do that. And I don't think many people can. We all need that autonomy to work in a way in which suits us. And actually, so I'm a business owner, I'm an employer myself, and I've learned how to be a good manager because of all of the bad experiences that I've had. And I thought I would never want to make anybody feel that way. Or and the point that you made, Jane, like, I don't care, like, when you work, as long as you do the work. And I haven't got time as a manager to say, oh, are they online now? Like, I'm busy. Who's got time to do that anyway? But Jo, just keeping that in mind, I just want to come to you with the next question, because this clearly isn't just about people who implement change and make decisions. This is what we're talking about, is what managers can do to support our colleagues, because they influence a lot of the person's experience, the employee experience in the workplace. and how they feel about their job and what they do. So, Jo, coming to you first, what does a good manager look like to you?
So as a disabled person, a good manager is able to be flexible. Now, we are just as good at our jobs as non-disabled people. We just might need to do things a slightly different way. And it's also, for me, really important that my managers educate themselves on the conditions that I live with and how they kind of affect me. So don't leave it up to us to outline every single bit of our medical history. Go and do your research. But also, if we do decide to share, listen and believe our lived experience, and understand that we are the experts in our own experiences and we have the insight into what we need, but we also might not have all of the answers. So I find it really useful and a really good sign of a good manager when they can say, done a bit of research, this is what some other people with similar conditions to you have found useful. Which of these would you like me to implement? Because that way the bulk of the work is not put on me, but I get to make kind of the decisions around what I need. And I think the fear of being discriminated against or being denied our reasonable adjustments is something that is very, very common among disabled people. And if a manager goes to that kind of extent of thinking about some potential adjustments that could be made, you'll feel a lot more confident disclosing to them what it is you actually need. There's also that element of being a good leader, being a good role model, advocating for disabled colleagues to the rest of the business and also to clients as well. Sometimes you'll work with clients and they will have no idea what kind of reasonable adjustments you've got in place. They'll have no idea what kind of things you might need to be able to do your job to the best of your ability. And these reasonable adjustments need to be considered, taken seriously, and applied consistently as well. But I think really the skills for managing a disabled person are pretty much the same skills required to be a good manager to anyone. It's all about communication, empathy, flexibility, and an understanding that we all do our best work when we're supported to work in a way that works for us. So if you decided that your data analyst was going to work from Mount Everest for a week, they probably wouldn't get much work done because they'd be too cold. It's the same thing as asking me to work from an office. I'm not going to get my work done because I'm going to be so fatigued. But you put me at home, I will smash it out the park, But for some people, they might want to work on Mount Everest, and that's fine. It's about providing that flexibility and that understanding. And I think when it comes down to it, kind of the bare bones of it, employers need to consider whether they are comfortable asking people to risk their lives to come into work, or whether they want to exert the tiny bit of extra effort required to facilitate them working from home. Because for some people, these are the stakes. That's not an over-exaggeration. Disabled people make up 20% of the population. And within that 20%, there is a significant faction that cannot work from the office without damage to their health. And I think if you value inclusion, the answer's pretty obvious.
You're so right. And something that I learned from the pandemic and from lockdowns was that nothing changes in society until the need for change is soon to suit is going to suit the majority, i.e. remote working. Of course, disabled people were asking for that pre-pandemic, but why did we only get it when it suited non-disabled people? And that's the reality of the world that we live in, because when we make decisions, whether we're managers or not, we usually make decisions based off the knowledge that we have or what the process or policy says, or we look at what other people are doing. And how often do we stop and put our head above the parapet and think, I'm going to do this a bit differently. I'm going to be brave. I'm going to be bold. Yes, I will let you work from home, for example. Why does it have to take a pandemic to allow people to work in a way that suits them? It's wild that like those words are coming out of my mouth right now. But
definitely.
Rachel,
and I think, even though it took a pandemic for employers to be forced into a position to let people work from home, we're now, many people can return to the office, many people can't, as Jo so eloquently said. But why aren't we learning the lessons from that? It was a horrible time. It was an absolute, disaster. So many people died. So many people lost their livelihoods. It was awful. But the silver linings were that we did a massive social experiment by accident to test flexible working, to test how do people work from home. And many of the people I've spoken to have the same problems that we have at Evenbreak. My biggest problem with our team is getting them to stop working when they've, why are you still online at 7 o'clock? Go and watch some trashy television. Or to take time off sick, when they really are ill. Don't, it's easier to carry on when you're ill and you're working from home, but you shouldn't. You should be resting or doing whatever it is you need to do to recover. And so as a manager, as a leader, one of our biggest problems at Evenbreak is making sure that our team do stop working, do take breaks, do have their exercise if that's what they need, do hydrate themselves, do take time off and take all their annual leave and take lunch breaks, because actually it's much easier to just plow on when you're working from home. So why is it now that we're getting employers saying, oh, we need people to come back into the office because they can't work from home? But they can, and they did, and we know that it's proved now. It's not speculation anymore, it's evidenced. So yeah, I
think as well, it points back, it comes back to this point of being really intentional about working remotely or in a hybrid way. We have to be better at putting boundaries in place to, have a lunch break, to stop working at a certain time, because I guess when you're in an in-person environment, you have natural rest breaks, the water cooler moments that I do personally miss. Or all the fun things that happen in offices. So I think it just points back to that reference we made earlier about how are you building your online and remote cultures as well. It's really important.
I do think one of the important, sorry to interrupt, Shani, I think one of the important things that sometimes we forget is that it is also, as Rachel mentioned earlier on, everybody doesn't always want to work from home all of the time. And it isn't an excuse for employers to say, oh, right, okay, well, we don't need to worry about whether the office is accessible or not, because all the disabled people can work from home. Or the disabled people might not want to work from home. And there'll be many non-disabled people who do want to work from home. So this should be about choice, whether you're disabled or you're not disabled, and what works best for you. And what we do at Evenbreak, very similar to what Jo was saying earlier on, is we look for opportunities for teamwork, for collaboration. So we have coffee mornings, tea afternoons. We get together when we can. So we recently had an away day where we all got together, and it's hard work because we are all disabled and we all have different access needs, and we have to find hotels, transport, venue that can cater and accommodate all of our various and sometimes conflicting access needs. But if we can't do that, we're in the wrong job. And actually it means that we make sure that we can accommodate people. And we do have members of the team who, for reasons very similar to Jo, whether it's fatigue or pain, can't travel, however accessible we make it. So they're there in the laptop, on the table with us. So they're not excluded. And it just takes a little bit of effort. It's not a difficult thing to do. Our teamwork is fantastic. I would say we are amazing allies of each other. I love watching our team support each other, without Rachel and I being involved. Whether we're actually in person together, whether we're online, whether we're talking about different ways of working. And if you have if you cultivate that kind of culture, then everybody benefits. And, it isn't a case of, oh, we're all working from home, so we can't do teamwork, we can't collaborate, we can't have that culture. We can, we've proved it. And most organizations proved it during the pandemic. It is not only possible, it's preferable.
I think that's a really good point, Jane. And also the point about office accessibility. What are you asking people to come back to? So there are some people who became unwell over the height of the pandemic and now can't walk up a flight of stairs. Are you still expecting them to be able to do that? Or are you going to put a lift in? Are you going to spend that money to do that? Do you have step-free access? Do you have induction loops? Do you have braille on signs? Do you have toilets you can actually fit a wheelchair in that isn't just a storage room? Because I promise you, there are things that you can do to make your office more accessible. So when we're being told, come back to the office, it's not just work in a way that doesn't work for you. It's also, here's a million barriers to actually doing your work and doing it well. So it's very disappointing, and it is personal. It's not just a policy decision that's made. It's saying we are going to make your life harder because this works better for us. And I think that we have to treat people as people, and part of being a good leader is seeing people for the individuals that they are. And when you're talking about kind of creating that culture, that collaboration, that working from home kind of way of doing things that you've obviously done incredibly successfully at Evenbreak, I think something that leaders can also model is vulnerability, and saying, you know what, I'm overwhelmed, I'm going to take a 15-minute break and come back ready to go. I think that's so important, that leaders can say, I'm going to just not do any work this afternoon because my mental health isn't that good, and I'm going to take some time to look after myself. I think that is one of the things you can do to create a culture where people are working the right amount. They're not slacking off, but they're not working themselves into the ground and, you know, checking their emails when they wake up at 3 a.m. and all of that sort of thing. I think it's all role modeling, and having conversations and being vulnerable. So yeah, I think there's a lot.
We're not doing this for the benefit just of the employees. We're doing it for the benefit of the business.
Absolutely.
If we don't remove those barriers, we are going to exclude so much talent. You know, I'm so proud of the team at Evenbreak. They are such incredible individuals. Yes, partly because they've had to navigate around all the barriers they face because of being disabled, but they are just an amazingly talented team. And why wouldn't we want to include, you know, people who are talented? Why would we want to exclude, you know, we talk about our candidates at Evenbreak as being premium candidates. All of our candidates live with disability. And we describe them as premium candidates because, as well as all of the diverse talents and skills and qualities that everybody has, they also have all of those skills learnt through navigating around those barriers. So creative thinking, problem solving, determination, project management, you know, we bring those things to work with us when we come. We don't leave them at the door. So the kind of people that we are excluding, if we say, right, everybody's back in the office 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, full time, it's not just that we're thinking, oh, well, they're only disabled people, so they don't matter anyway. These are premium candidates, premium employees that we're excluding. Why would we do that? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, especially when there's 1 million disabled people right now that can and want to work and are actively looking to get into the workplace, but barriers and bias are excluding them. That's not okay. And Jo, you talked about mental health. You know, we know that 70% of disabled people live with non-visible conditions and impairments, and mental health is the most prevalent type of disability across working age people. So this isn't just about ramps and wheelchairs. This is about health in its most holistic way, everything you can see as well, definitely everything that you can't as well see. But I'm just conscious of time. We're gonna come to Q&A in just 2 minutes, but before we do, I'd just love to go around and ask you all, what's the one tip or piece of advice that you'd like the audience to leave with today? Just really brief, something you haven't already shared. And Rachel, will come to you first, but we'll give everyone the opportunity to put some more questions in the chat.
Can I be tiny, really greedy? So number one, make it really clear on your job adverts. Make it really clear on your job adverts that you are open to flexible, hybrid working from home, because you are missing out on talent if you don't do that. Another, just a quick one, building that online culture. Learn how to give a good virtual hug.
Oh, how do you do that?
Give a lot of virtual hugs in Evenbreak.
I love that.
Well.
I'm gonna do that. Thank you. Jo.
Oh, shall I?
So I think my piece of advice is that, and we're talking about disability a lot today, and we're talking about disabled people as almost a category of people, but any one of us could become disabled at any point in time. We're not in a silo. We are part of your communities. We are part of your workplaces. We are part of your social groups. We are part of every single section of society. So don't dismiss us or consider us as other, because we are you. And I think it's so important that people are thinking that way. It's not just what can we do for disabled people who are currently in our workplace. It's what can we do for people looking to come into the business, or people who are in the business who may become disabled. Because if we live long enough, we'll all become disabled. It's just the way bodies work. And I think we've got such a narrow understanding of what disability is, that it doesn't encompass the whole 20% of the population that's affected by the issues we've been talking about today. So remember, we're not just a box. We're so much more than that. We are everything that you are.
Yeah,
absolutely. Jane, what would be your one tip?
Yeah, I think I'd say to employers and HR people and managers, don't think about inclusion as something that's a burden, that's a nuisance, that's something that we've got to do. Think about inclusion as an enormous opportunity to include people who are traditionally not included, but to make everybody feel included. You know, the straight, white, non-disabled male is just as valuable to your organization as your disabled Black lesbian. You know, everybody within your organization is important. All of that potential talent that's out there is important. So inclusion isn't a burden or a problem to solve. Inclusion is a real opportunity. See it as a core business skill and need, rather than as something that's, oh, I suppose we've got to think about inclusion as well. It's such a great opportunity. That's how I would say.
I love that. And I think, I feel like the words inclusion and diversity have just become buzzwords now, and I think their real meaning is lost. Inclusion is creating a culture where you accept people as they are, with what makes them who they are. It's that simple. Can you ever imagine waking up one day and going into the workplace and standing outside of your office and say, no, we're not having your type today, or no, you can't come in today, it's your day tomorrow, or what, or ever, like, or like in an online setting that would never happen. So why do we allow our actions to dictate that? It just doesn't make sense to me. But I just want to come to Q&A quickly. So please pop in any questions that you have. The first question that I want to ask is, what good practices or ideas do you have in place to connect with your remote team? So really coming back to that point about being intentional about building that online culture, can you tell us any more things that you've done or have worked well?
I think that project working that Rachel mentioned earlier on is really important. So we will do things like Diversifying Group do. So we'll have like team meetings and then each team will have their own meetings. So there's a lot of interaction between people. But then it's great to have a particular project to work on where you might have people from different teams who are working on that. So they will meet up and they'll perhaps use the skills of other parts of the team as well to bring into that. And it encourages people to talk to each other, to recognize the skills that each other have, and also to work in ways that might work for them, because of course everybody at Evenbreak has their own access needs, but they also need to accommodate the access needs of others, and sometimes those might conflict. So those are some really rich discussions about, well, I need you to have your camera on so I can lip read, but I need my camera off because I have ADHD and don't want the spotlight on me. So you need to have those conversations about how do we make this work for everybody. And it might be if you've got different parts of the organization working together. So it might be, well, those 4 people are working on that project, or those 5 people are working on that project, and then they come back to the rest of the team and feedback. So I think just really looking for opportunities for people to work on, on real things, not on pretend things, on real work issues together, so that the team really get to know each other, understand each other's strengths and their best ways of working. And we do that quite a lot at Evenbreak, as well as the kind of informal things like coffee mornings, and then we'll have, sometimes we'll have away days where most of us get together, but there might be other bits where maybe the marketing team get together or the account managers get together, and that will be either in person or online, whatever works for the for the people involved, and just looking for opportunities really for those interactions with each other.
I think what I'm hearing there is make it really meaningful. Like, don't have don't do it for meeting's sake.
Yeah,
Like, make sure
sure.
it has proper meaning. Joe, you shared some amazing things that Diversifying Group are doing. So my question to you is, what happens if it gets into the space of it's the same people or like that are attending sort of the online things and you're not, and or just any advice to people that might be struggling to bring in more of their colleagues or employees? How
So
do you get beyond that?
I think it's about creating a culture where if people aren't coming in, you go out. You've got to reach out to people. You've got to say, you know, I haven't heard from you in a while. You're all right. Is there anything I can help with? I had a bit of spare capacity on Friday, so I messaged in the team chat saying, does anyone need some help with anything? And got to have a great meeting out of it that made me feel really connected to the organization and what's happening across the business. And we all do that. We all look for opportunities to work with each other because we like each other. And I think it's creating that culture where people want to help out each other because they feel that kind of connectedness, they feel that kind of shared mission, values, purpose, and it's all kind of linking back to why are you even working here? Why are you here? Why are you at this company? And for me, it's because I believe in the mission that we've got, and so does everybody else here, which means that whatever anybody's working on, that's something I want to get involved with and help in any way I can. And that's helped develop me as an individual as well. I've got far more skills now than I did before because I've worked with so many different teams on so many different projects. And it's just a lot of fun. And I'm going to plug training for a second here. The other thing that we do is when we develop a new training session within Diversifying Group, we run it internally. That's upskilling our staff. It's giving people a chance to have discussions, to have conversations, to get to know each other's points of view. And it can be a really, really good way of getting people in a room, whether that's a physical room or a virtual room, and sharing something about yourself, about your beliefs, about the things that are important to you. So yeah, I love it.
Thank you. That's really tangible stuff there. Thanks a lot. Rachel, a question for you. What advice would you have for someone who is being sort of asked to come back in the workplace, but that's not going to be good for them or their style of working? Have you got any tips that you could share on how to sort of navigate that conversation?
I would honestly ask for the justification. I mean, it's really difficult for me to put myself in that position because I honestly, if somebody came to me and said, look, this is going to affect my mental health, straight away, as a sort of a heart-led manager, I'd go, come on, let's sit down, let's talk about it. I think the thing that's really important, if I just flip that round the other way, if a manager is being asked to implement that, they have to be a barrier. So if they've been speaking to their team member, the thing that I think is always really important is that we should never assume what adjustments people make. We should never assume that, oh, well, the disabled person is probably going to want to work from home, so I'm just going to push back on management, you know, the next layer up. And we should never assume that, as an example, people might say, well, we can't, I'm deafened. People might make a lot of assumptions about the sort of adjustments that I need, and we might go off sort of making all of these adjustments. I come in and go, what's all this then? I don't need this. So as managers, it's absolutely our job to understand what the requirement is for our team members. Seriously, if you've got a manager who's saying you really need to come back in, and this may be because I'm quite a lot older and I'm able to do this sort of thing, just go, why? Why? Set out, you know, the reasons that you want to actually continue to work in the way that you work and the benefits to the business. I'm in a lot of Facebook groups and this question does come up because there are some not very enlightened organisations who are kind of going, my manager's going, I've got to go back in the office. And the advice every single time, even from the HR teams, is ask them why. Set the business case out. Just say, look, if I work from home, I can do X, Y, Z. If you make me come back to the office, Joe made a brilliant point about all of those barriers. It just drains you, that cognitive, like, oh, now this, oh, now this, oh, now this. And then you get to your desk and you go, right, I've got to start something now. Why would any organisation want that? And if you're a manager and you are getting pressure from above to get your team to come in and you don't think it's right, come and talk to any of the amazing organisations out there that can help you to build that business case so you can push back. But if you are that manager, I'm sure you're not, but you know what I mean.
That's such good advice. And that really resonates with me. Like, I can't use public transport. I live in London, so getting anywhere is a nightmare, and it stresses me out before I've even got to where I've needed to get to and to do the work that I need to do.
Yeah.
And, you know, try and mitigate it in so many different ways, but I can't avoid it. So I completely resonate with that. But really good advice there. So thank you so much. So just to sum up, we've had a really insightful conversation, shared lots of different tips there about how to navigate certain conversations, why we have found ourselves in the situation that we have right now in this post-pandemic world and work. And I think the real reminder here is to don't forget that all employees want are the right tools to do their work and the right environment and the right support. Yes, we've got needs, but we've also got preferences as well, and they go hand in hand. So I just want to say huge thanks to my panelists, Rachel, Joe and Jane. It's been amazing. I hope we can do this again. I've really enjoyed it myself. And just keep doing all the amazing work that your respective organisations are doing. And a huge thank you to everyone that's taken the time out today to join us. We've really appreciated you being here. But yeah, that's everything that I wanted to say. So have a great rest of the week. And you've got two amazing organisations here that are able to help you, whatever challenges you might be experiencing.
Thanks very much. And we'd be very happy to carry on the conversation with anybody who's interested in, you'll find us on evenbreak.co.uk, and yeah, we're always available for a chat.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shani, for facilitating this discussion. You've been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Rachel and Jane too, and everybody else.
Yeah, you've
Thanks,
been
everyone.
Thank you. And yes, if you want to connect on LinkedIn or anything like that, or you are having to have those difficult conversations, come and talk to us, because we have got, you know, some strategies and some ideas that can help.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.